Welcome to the roller coaster of midlife. I'm your host, Lucie Q. Now, one of the hardest things as a mother that I've encountered was helping our oldest prepare to leave for college. It sent me into a tailspin of questioning who I was beyond being a wife and mom. And it was a tailspin that landed me at rock bottom. I remember the day that we dropped him off at the dorms, and tears were just streaming down my face. I felt like the ground was shifting below me, and I struggled to keep my balance. It's something that many of us mothers go through, including today's guest, Kristin Svets, a multifaceted life design coach, breathwork and meditation maestro, sound bath facilitator, and celebrated author. Kristin's mission? To bridge the gap between outer success and inner peace, especially for women navigating the profound journey of midlife. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that lovely introduction. So nice to be here.
Now, as we were chatting about before we hit record, there are a lot of parallels in our story. And I think that there's a lot of things that as midlife moms that we go through when it comes to getting our kids ready to start their own lives. Can you share that point for you when you realized what was going on and you started to realize that who you were as a mother was changing?
Yes, it's such a fascinating journey. I actually really feel like that this process of launching our kids to fly the nest is similar to becoming a mother, but it's the opposite end of it, right? When we became moms, it's such a huge identity shift. And it's hard. It's hard when you're first a mom. And we go through this whole parenting journey. And yes, our primary purpose on that journey is raising these beautiful kids and hopefully helping them launch. But as that gets closer and closer, it starts to create so many emotions within us, right? I started to feel the fear of like, have I done enough? Have I raised them with enough knowledge and wisdom? Like, how are they going out into the world? How are they going to handle certain difficult situations? Have I taught them those things correctly? Have I, taught them how to do the little things from laundry and holding their fork and knife correctly to the big things of the relationships with their roommates and relationships as they start dating? And that panic that was starting to set in was an interesting process to go through, because as a mindset coach, I also know that we can reframe that, right? And we can say, okay, yes, but this is everything we ever wanted for them. So it's a huge success. And that brings it back to us of, oh, okay, we had this huge purpose and we did this great job, whether they go to college or it's just launching into adulthood, right? And we've had this great process of doing that, but it's leaving a void within us because our identity is changing and our purpose is changing. And that is an emotional thing to process that we are not prepped for. I actually think the comparison of when you have a kid, like you have the 9 months of knowing that the baby's coming and you read all the books and everything. But when we're launching our kids, we're doing so much work to prep them, from college applications and packing lists and all of the things, that we're losing ourselves along the way in that process, honestly, because we really don't have time. And we need to change that narrative and open up to the fact that we actually can do some work to prep ourselves before and after, right? Because as you said, yours was like the day that you dropped him off.
It was a buildup for
Yeah.
sure. but nobody, and I don't know if this came from being, I was the first in the family to have a child. So my child went to university first. I was the first in our friends. I didn't have any peers that went through this. And there was nobody giving me the heads up saying, just be aware, it will hit you.
Yes.
Even just giving that heads up. I had no clue. And I think part of the way I was in denial in some sense, because I just seemed oblivious to what needed to get done when it came to first submitting the applications. We were in Canada and the process is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think I was in denial, but nowhere along that process did I stop and think, what about me?
Right, right. And that is what I think makes it so difficult, is that then when you get to that point, whether it's your first kid or your last kid, that we're so focused on doing our jobs, right? Like I do think like the role of the mom is so interesting, because I remember having this moment even when they were younger, before I was in this process of launching them, but just that feeling of overwhelm that hits you in parenting, that you have lost yourself along the way. Not that you aren't so grateful and happy to be raising these human beings, but you know what everybody else's favorite food is. You know what their favorite ice cream is, right? And then if somebody asks you what's your favorite ice cream flavor, it's hard to even remember.
It's like whatever the kids left in the fridge.
Exactly. Like, what's left over? Exactly. Like, I'll take that. And so when we suddenly are faced with the changing shift of course, we're still parenting them, but we're parenting them as young adults, no longer in the house. That creates a huge open space that when you are not prepared for it, it feels like a void. It is that,
It swallowed me up.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And it does for a lot of people. And that's actually why I decided to start helping women with this, because my journey has also taken me on a journey of meditation, mindset work, breath work. I've always been spiritually inspired. So I was raised Catholic. I love yoga. I love all the different spiritual paths. And I really realized that when you combine that path with mindset work, that you are building resiliency. So the question of like what to do next when you have this new open space in your life and you're trying to figure out your purpose, that I do think, that's such this big question of like, okay, but what's next, right? And your brain is going to say, I have no idea, because there's so much sadness. There is a self-protection mechanism going on. And doing the mindset work to reframe those thoughts is helpful on the front end, but you can still get in your own way if you don't tap into subconscious and the body and moving into the nervous system work, which is why I love meditation and breath work, because that doesn't have to be seen as spiritual by anyone. That is truly nervous system regulation that can build your resiliency. And I started to notice this really when my oldest was like a junior in high school, even more so when he was a senior in high school, and my peers and friends were sending their kids off, and maybe some of them had older kids. And I would see these really difficult, challenging reactions, physical reactions to dropping off your kids, and that they don't live at home anymore. And especially if you're flying across the country or wherever. And I started realizing that my long-term practices of meditation and breath work were potentially helping me find a little more grounded, centered place to process this. And that is not to say I wasn't sad. I definitely still cried at that drop-off dorm room thing for both of my boys. I have 2 boys in college, and so I've been through it. I've been through the great roommate situation. I've been through the horrible roommate situation. And of course, I cried in both, but it is doing this prep work of nurturing yourself does allow you to be more aware, to hold space for yourself, because exactly what you were just saying of like, you had no idea that it was going to hit you. And so for your listeners that maybe aren't there yet or are still actually feeling that, when they start to nurture themselves and create space for themselves internally, that softens the blow, because we need a lot of self-compassion and grace, and to give ourselves space that it's okay to be sad. We're supposed to be sad. It's a huge identity shift. Change is hard. It's just a part of life. And when we give ourselves that space to feel sad, that's when we can hit a point of renewal and start to grow.
But that resiliency is that muscle that you're exercising. I didn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, excuse me, for me, I hit rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically catapulted me on this crash course. And it was that day that I started my journaling practice. And I, hands down, and I've built a whole formula around it, because yeah, journaling can be really hard at the beginning. But I can hands down say that it's like you just said, journaling, meditation, yoga, those have been the 3 things that have got me out of that crisis point, and has gotten me through many things since then. And I did not do yoga beforehand. I did not practice meditation. I did not do yoga. So for me, is I had to go through this crash course. It sort of revealed itself in divine timing, as it was supposed to, because there's only so much you can do when you're that raw. There's only so much that you can do. So I did start with baby steps. And when I was ready, the next thing came to me. But when I look back on my journey now, both of our kids have graduated from college, and we've gone through, my oldest, he didn't like university when we first dropped him off. So he dropped out. He came back home. We moved to the city where he was. COVID hit, all of this. And then we ended up leaving our kids to move back to where we used to be during COVID.
Nice.
But I realized I was able to navigate all of that craziness in a way that I could not have done if I had not built that, what I consider a daily sacred practice.
I love that. Yes. Journaling is so powerful. I loved learning that about you, that it's such a part of your journey. I have a book coming out this fall called Designed to Shine. It's living intentionally to discover your inner light. And I also have a chapter in there about journaling. It's so powerful. And it's interesting. I'm thinking about that some of your listeners might have resistance to it, although I'm sure listening to you over time that they know that it's made such a difference. And this is where we have to be aware of how our brain works. Our brain is sending 70 to 90,000 thoughts a day. I don't know how the scientists measure that, right? But it's some statistic that's out there. And that a large percentage, over 70% of those, are subconscious, repeated, and negative thoughts. So, and that is because we're wired in human evolution to be safe. And that's great. That keeps us alive. It's helped us grow. But with where we are now, we need to know that to overcome our resistance to doing these things. So I do feel like some people are like, oh, I tried journaling and I don't get it. Or like you said, that even when you start, it's hard at first. And so one of my favorite prompts within journaling, when you don't know, is to ask yourself, yes, okay, I know I don't know, but what if I did know? And to just move through the resistance, because the resistance is a part of it. And that is true with building a daily sacred practice, whether it is journaling, your gratitude practice, meditation, breath work. You are going to face resistance from your brain for doing that because your brain does not like change. I actually love to compare this with New Year's resolutions, right? New Year's resolutions, everyone
Are a
fails at
waste
New
of
Year's
time.
resolutions. Right. Everyone fails at them because they're trying to power through with willpower, with discipline and willpower. And James Clear in Atomic Habits talks about this, that there is a willpower fatigue. And that is because, of course, we can, say, we're going to do this and we're going to overcome our mind and tell ourselves to change how we are. And that falls away because the discipline and willpower fatigue kicks in. When you come from a different angle, that you want to nourish yourself, you want to lift yourself up, and you think about it more as almost like mindset fitness or mindfulness fitness, that you're not going to expect things to change right away. If you went to a trainer for one time, it's not going to be fun and you're not going to see any changes. And so the first time you journal and the first time you meditate, it's a bumpy road, right? It's not that like well-worn path in the forest. It's the very bumpy, like not walked very far part of the forest. And that's what's going on in your brain, which is why it's hard to make yourself walk that road. But when you find you'll start to see the daily improvements in showing up with how you are, of feeling better, even in this time of change. So you get to a place where you can hold the sadness and you can still find joy, right? They don't have to cross each other out. You get to a place where you can hold space for both, and building those skills and resiliency with, as you said, the daily sacred practice that will then have the ripple effect into so many other areas of your life.
And for me, I take it a step further and I actually dive into, well, why do I want that change? I get down to the root of why do I want that change? What is it? What future self is it that I'm looking for? Because, and this goes back to Simon Sinek's teachings about the power of why. Once you understand why it is that you want what you want, you don't need willpower. You don't need motivation. That your why is what's going to draw you forward. And for me, that was an absolute game changer, because I knew when I was at my worst and there were, so many things that were broken in my life, I had guilt and shame because I had all of these blessings in my life. How dare I feel this way?
Yes.
That, it really sort of, it took a lot to create that change and to find out, if this isn't what I want in my life, what do I want? If not this, then what? And asking why, if you actually look at it, it's a question that we have been discouraged from asking. And this goes right back to we talked about programming. Our educational system can do a quite nasty job of programming us to behave how they want us to behave, not necessarily in what's the best interest for ourselves. And I've thought about this, and it goes back to our school days. You did not ask why, or in my case, you asked why. And then you got in trouble because asking why is seen as being challenging.
Mm-hmm.
It's seen as not complying.
Mm-hmm.
But really, asking why is that natural curiosity that we all have inside of ourselves.
Yes, I love that term, natural curiosity. It's so important to give yourself the gift of revisiting your why. And that is the fascinating part of being at this stage of life, of your kids flying the nest, of being in midlife, is that we get to explore not just who we think we should be, because that is, those messages are coming to us from this same place of not being able to ask why. So our brain, again, will play these games with us of like, you should be this way now. You should be doing these things. And what we really want to explore in this stage, the way that we get to a place of feeling good again, is to answer the question of who are we now? Not who are we before we had kids and can we bring her back? Because no, it's been 18, 20, 25 years. And hopefully we have changed a lot and we've evolved a lot. And so we don't have to be her. It's great to actually journal and have fun and yes, explore what did you love back then. But the real question is, who are we now? And we get to fill this void from the identity shift of our kids flying the nest to filling that void with rediscovering our own inner light, our own inner wisdom. We have so much wisdom and power within us. And the primary way to find it is to slow down, is to journal, is to meditate. I also love breath work and teach breath work because a lot of people struggle. Again, the brain is like, oh, I tried meditation. I'm terrible at it because your brain's racing. Breath work does an amazing job of letting you just focus on the breath, which is the gateway into a lovely meditation practice that is going to help you answer this question of who am I now and how can I shine my light?
And who are you now? A lot of us, if you look at Gen X women, we progress quickly from being daughters to wives to mothers. So we probably never really got to explore who we are as individuals. We were programmed to adopt these titles, these labels. We were also programmed to follow this checklist. Go to college, get married, have 2 kids, get the car, get the dog, get the vacations, all of this. And, a lot of that programming, it takes time to undo and to really get back to, well, who am I as an individual? Who am I authentically? And what is it that I want? What do I want to bring to this world? And because the first part, yes, our first gift to this world were our children. And there is absolutely nothing wrong that we chose that. But now we get to write something new for ourselves.
Yes.
And for some women, it came very easily. They just knew what they wanted to pursue. There are some of us that it was a journey. My journey's been 6 years. And it's only now that I can honestly say, I know who I am, I know what I want, and I have the confidence to go after it.
Yes, I love that.
But it's 6 years of journaling.
Right.
But the way I look at it, I had to live those 6 years anyway, so you may as well be using them well.
Right, exactly. It is giving yourself this self-compassion and grace that you are allowed to have time to process this and figure it out. And that even as our kids go off into their new adventure as young adults into the world, we get to also create our next adventure. And we don't have to have the answer right away, but incorporating these practices will help you find your true answer.
And the joy is in the journey, getting
Yes.
there. And
Yes.
that's the important thing is so often, and I've had to explain this to our kids, they want to get to this point. They want to hit this milestone. They want to do this. And I have to keep reminding them, no, life is in the journey. Make sure you're stopping to enjoy it. And that's a lesson that it has taken me 50 years to understand, but I'm here.
Yes, yes. I have another version of that. I like to say that the journey is the purpose. So we're always trying to figure out, like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And yes, we do feel like as our identity shift changes, our purpose is changing. And I really believe when you look at the big picture of life, that the journey is the purpose. So embrace this next stage of moving into empty nesting with so much possibility and allowing it to unfold in its own journey of what it should be for you.
And you're not alone, nor should you take this journey alone. There are countless resources and coaches like yourself, Kristin. There are groups and whatnot. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to be a martyr. You don't have to take this part of your journey alone. And there's a lot of fun when you're doing it in community.
Yes, yes, I agree. Community makes such a huge difference. I mean, that's one of the important things to do at this stage of life, right? Is to nurture your community.
Now, as we wrap up today, Kristin, can you share any final words of wisdom with our audience?
Yes, that as our kids fly the nest, that our next adventure is coming home to our true authentic selves. And that when we are coming home to ourselves, that actually lets us fly through this next chapter as well. And it is a sacred journey.
I love that. I love that. Now, to connect with Kristin, please check out all of the show notes. I will have all of the links in there. And my goal for the Rollercoaster Midlife is to empower women like you to thrive in this amazing chapter of our lives. So go on, embrace the adventure, and start rocking midlife like the badass that you are. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Our greatest power is in our community. Don't forget to visit my website, therollercoasterpodcast.com, and click on Start Here to get your free audio course, 3 Steps to Go from Hot Mess to Badass and Start Rocking Midlife. Thank you to my listeners for choosing to join us. And Kristin, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me.
Until next time, keep riding the roller coaster and embracing the midlife adventure.